Beyond and hello everyone, my name is Jonathon Dornbush and this is Podcast Beyond episode 620. If you're wondering what that laughter was over the intro, that was Lucy O'Brien.
I'm sorry, it's just when Max does goofy things next to me, I can't not.
I always try to make a face in the camera so it times it right, but I do it poorly, and so I'm just making this dumb rictus for
And it went on for really long.
Yeah.
Max, of course, is also here with us, as is Brian Altano. Thank you all for joining us for this week. We're going to be diving back into PlayStation history as today, as we're recording the day before this episode goes live, is the 25th anniversary of PlayStation. And what better way to celebrate a brand than to talk about our favorite memories of it, which is what they want us to do, but we're going to do it anyway. Before we do get into the show, a couple of announcements, and I wanted to read a letter that a friend of the show, Yair, sent in a couple weeks ago, asked his permission to read this. It's a little bit personal, but Yair, who's written into the show before, of course, many times, wrote in to say this was earlier in November. He wrote, "Hi, had a long and difficult week, but that hopefully turned out okay, but I figured I'd send this in." I'm going to zoom in so I can read better. "I hope this gets to the crew, but I wanted to write it to, first of all, say happy birthday to Max. I first got to hear you from the Comedy Button Kickstarter and show, followed your work at Rev3, Destructoid, and now IGN. I love your perpetual positivity and optimism while still confronting and sharing some of the struggles along the way."
That's you, buddy.
Wow.
"I'd like to think that I sort of grew up along Brian this past decade. The willingness to change your life and try to be a better version of yourself is a constant reminder to do the same in my life. Lucy's
really sweet.
Lucy's ability to take everything in stride and the f*** the haters approach is something I adore, and attempting to implement that in my own life to partial success.
Oh.
And last but not least, Jonathan, I still remember tearing up reading your Polygon piece, that's a long time ago, and sharing your experiences. Since you came to IGN, the show has been infected with your excitement and positivity, putting the spotlight not only on the games, but on the people that make them and the people that play them as well. Memory card is my favorite part of the show. Sorry, trophy test. People argue if games matter or not, if they are art or not, but often don't stress the effects of the communities that form around the shows and sites that cover them. I've made numerous close friends through them and can honestly say that you made my life better and maybe made me a more positive person. And for that, I want to say thank you. The show matters more than I could say and forever will be a part of my life. Keeping awesome, Yair."
Oh, that is so lovely.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, it's very moving.
I'm honestly tearing up a little bit.
Yeah, Yair, thank you so much for writing that in. We've talked about sometimes the negativity that can appear in comment sections for this show or for anything on the internet as it exists. But in general, the positivity both of, for me personally, getting to work with these amazing people every week on the show and every day in the office, and for the positivity that you and many other people in the community bring to us. So thank you so much for writing that in. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
We appreciate it so much.
It's a huge honor to keep the show going and reach people.
It's a time of year to be sentimental and nice, and say if you can't say you love someone on Christmas, when can you say it? Damn it.
Yes, of course, we're looking back at many things this year, not just the people we love, but the games we loved. Not today, but I believe tomorrow, December 5th, from when the show goes up, as time works. Lucy,
Yes.
The best of 2019 nominations are going up.
Nominees will
right?
go up. Yep. So that's nominees for games and for movies, TV, anime, and comics as well. So they're all going up on the 5th. And yeah, I think you guys will hopefully be pleasantly surprised.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about those the week after. There have been some changes to some of the categories that we can go into once all those nominations are out.
That's correct.
And explain a little bit of that, especially as it applies to some of the platforms. But there are also community polls for all of those.
Yes.
So if you want your voice heard in our community vote, please go vote for those on the website when all of those go up on December 5th. We'll have a big blowout on IGN.com, so read everything about that, and you will get to vote for your favorite games as well. Of course, this is the 25th anniversary of PlayStation this week. You've probably seen some stuff on IGN about that. You've probably seen some stuff on the PlayStation blog, various Twitter accounts. And one of the things going around is, of course, a lot of people talking about their favorite games from each generation. We actually did this as a topic on the show, I think like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was the only one of this current cast that was on that episode.
Oh.
So I figured we should do it again with all of you.
Yeah, that sounded like a real sham.
Yeah, stupid Barrett Courtney on the show.
Honestly, Battle for Bikini Bottom and
Donkey Kong 64 5 times in a row. We love you, Barrett. We miss you.
Arkham. So I wanted to hear from all three of you about your favorite games from the PlayStation home console generation. This is not us saying what the best games were. This is favorite games. Someone took a stab at my favorite games from each generation. I don't know who wrote these. I'm going to guess Max.
Yeah, that was me. I thought you would go in and change them.
I didn't.
Lucy also didn't get the memo that we're supposed to pick ones that other people haven't picked.
Well, I didn't realize
We did like
that.
a greatest
That wasn't
hits of all of
memo.
our picks. So.
We'll have Lucy go.
There
at
are
the end
rules,
of that.
Lucy.
Max's
Can't help it
guesses
if
for
we
mine
all have good taste.
were Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet and Clank, Heavenly Sword, and Persona 5. Not bad guesses. It would be Ripto's Rage 2, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage for PlayStation 1, Kingdom Hearts 2 for PS2, probably...
Kingdom Hearts, I forgot about that.
Yeah, probably Uncharted 2 or...
What about a Heavenly Sword, though?
The Last of Us? I never played
You
it.
seem like a Heavenly Sword
I
man.
never played
Whose
it.
favorite game is Heavenly Sword?
I think Jonathon Dornbush.
It could be one day. I'll play it for a Let's Play.
I really kind of sort of liked Heavenly
Hey,
Sword.
look, I'm not saying
I'm
there's
not
anything
yeah.
wrong with Heavenly Sword.
No,
It's
no,
just
no,
like
no.
not like it's not like a best of a generation.
No, but it has a lot of good stuff going for it. One of the weirdest things about that game is the way the camera moves. It moves like it's on like a track.
Right.
Like it's got this weird train that swings back and forth. But I think it's like a really fun action game, and I really dig it. I'm glad it got made. It led to them working on a bunch of other cool stuff. So
They also, 7 years after it came out, made a CGI film.
oh yeah, was that
That must have
U-Bowl?
been a winner.
I feel like U-Boll was
looking
trying to make a Heavenly Sword
Might have
movie at
been
some
a
point.
Uwe movie.
The director was Gun-Ho Jung, written by Todd Farmer, starring Anna Torv from Fringe,
Oh.
Alfred Molina, Thomas Jane,
Alfred Molina was in
And
that.
Ashley
Dr.
Ball.
Octopus and the Punisher versus Heavenly Sword? How will she get
Sandman.
out of this
Wow,
one?
was that an off year for Alfred? Because wow,
I guess.
like he is way better than that material.
Yeah, Anna Torv was Naruko, Alfred Molina was King Bohan, Thomas Jane was Loki, and Ashley Ball was Kai.
Wow, it sounds like you know these characters pretty well, Jonathan. Is
As
it
my
possibly
favorite,
because
yes.
you love Heavenly Sword?
And Nolan North was in it as like 5 people, which is
Yes.
pretty on brand for him.
Yeah, that seems fair. And then for PS4 would be God of War. Anyway, I want to hear from all three of you. Brian, we'll start with you. To my right.
PS1. You know what we should let's go around. Oh, I guess we burned through all 4 of yours. I was going to
Well,
say
I
go,
just did mine quickly because I've talked on the
Okay.
show about it, so I just wanted to go. So yeah, let's go generation by
Yeah,
generation.
yeah. We'll start with PS1. And I just noticed we didn't put Vita or PSP on this list.
We can do.
We'll do that
honorable
another time.
mentions.
Yeah. My pick for PS1 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is not the most sort of like revolutionary game. It's not really a way to kind of like justify this new cutting edge technology. It is essentially a giant 16-bit game. It's a spiritual successor to all of the best Castlevania games, but the first ones that really sort of like, I think took it in a direction that sort of subsequently became the way the rest of that franchise nestled in for a while. It is a gorgeous 2D action platformer Metroidvania with one of the coolest twists in video game history that even if it's been spoiled for you a million times is absolutely worth playing and reliving. I think that unlike a lot of PS1 games, it's aged incredibly well. It still totally holds up.
Graphically, yeah.
Graphically,
it's
yeah.
Still,
Gameplay wise, it kicks ass. I feel like there's an alternate universe where Castlevania just became like 3D action platformers for a while, like Castlevania 64 and stuff like that. And Castlevania Symphony of the Night is the game that went to, I would say, inspire all of the GBA and DS games that came after it, you know, Area of Sorrow, Order of Ecclesia, all those awesome games. And that we don't get anymore for some reason. We got Bloodstained this year, which is good. But yeah, that's my pick. I absolutely love that game. It kicks ass. You can pretty much play it everywhere now, so please do if you haven't.
like you were saying, it's kind of the blueprint for every Metroidvania that has come since then.
Yeah.
Is in both like the layout and the structure and the gameplay and trying to recapture the magic of that twist. I think a lot of games try to do. Not always the same success, but yeah, that game is such a landmark game.
Yep.
I think we always talk about the PlayStation 1 as being sort of the first PlayStation, but it was also in a lot of ways a successor to the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I think that Symphony of the Night's a perfect example of like taking sort of, I mean, also a lot of the JRPGs that came over, Final Fantasy VII, for instance, being like, here's the logical progression of a lot of games that people really loved on this, you know, previous generation.
Yeah, which is really interesting because if you look at the way that sort of massive, you know, almost infamous divorce between Nintendo and Sony spiraled out, is we got two timelines, and one was the N64, a game that had, or a console that had practically no 2D games because they were so like taboo at the time that everyone thought if I'm going to spend $80 on a console game, it better be 3D because 3D means good and 2D means bad. Even though up until that point we had decades of like history and architecture on how to build really good 2D games, we kind of shelved all that for this bold new medium of making everything a 3D platformer, which actually only resulted in 3 or 4 really good 3D platformers and 50 or 60 terrible ones. And on the PlayStation, they were like, no, we we're still doing 2D stuff here. We're still going to do like JRPGs. We're still going to do action platformers and Metroidvanias. So yeah, I love that. I'm so happy that got to happen.
There was a good blend of stuff on the PS1. I think there are a lot of games we all think of that kind of define the PS1 for us. Not all of them are on the PlayStation 1 Classic, unfortunately. But for a lot of different people, that console is defined by a lot of different types of games.
Yeah.
Both genre and look and feel and gameplay and everything. And speaking of a totally different game, Max.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yes.
Metal Gear Solid. The first one, so good. Also, again, kind of the logical progression of games that existed on previous hardware. The first Metal Gear was on NES, which was like kind of a subpar port of an MSX game, which never saw the light of day stateside, and was the direct sequel to a game that never came stateside until it was packed onto a disc later on. But
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of cool to be like, hey, let's take a formula that worked pretty well in 2D and really just kind of let's make it cinematic. Let's make it tell a story. Let's give it a big Hollywood score. Let's add some pomp and some bombast here. And it was, I don't know. I remember that game blew me away when I first played it. Like, it just completely, like, it was like, oh, you're playing a movie, but in like a cool way. And
I want to say that was like PlayStation's Mario 64 moment. Like,
That was the reason, I'm actually thinking back, that was the reason why I decided to buy a PlayStation over a Nintendo 64.
Yep.
Because I had to make the choice, because I was buying it myself. I'd saved up my little pennies, doing crappy bullshit jobs
nonsense
for my mum.
New Zealand money.
Nonsense New Zealand money for nonsense chores that my
metal
mother
bird
gave me.
squares or whatever.
And yeah, that was the reason, because I played it at a video game store, you know, when they used to have like little demos, like demo kiosks, and I got so hooked on that first level, and I got so good at it that I was like, this is it, I have to get it.
Yeah. I mean, that's like kind of the understated power of a disc-based medium was you could have demo discs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were basically no demos on the N64. That was a pain in the ass to do. Those carts were like $80 each. You could stick a disc to a magazine and mail it to some kid's house, and he'd be playing some violent M-rated games.
Yeah.
Kind of awesome.
Well, the young employees at Gamesman, Willis Street, Wellington,
Gamesman,
Gamesman, the Secret Service.
were really impressed with my skills at Metal Gear Solid.
is that me?
That's you.
Goddamn robocallers. I didn't cancel my
RoboCop?
Social Security.
RoboCop
yeah.
keeps calling.
Yeah. No, I remember playing that Metal Gear Solid demo at like a kiosk at a Kmart in Torrington, Connecticut, and going up and being like, wearing my big crappy winter coat and being like, oh, this looks kind of cool. This looks like an exciting game.
My name's Max.
And then like walking in there and like having no idea how to play it. Like, I think a friend of mine basically showed it to me, like, no, this is actually really cool. Check it out. But before that, I was like, oh, it's like an action game. Go in here and run around. And like, no, it's not. This is a game about avoiding conflict, which totally flies in the face of everything I'd learned from video games up until that point, where I'm like, oh, I'll just fire my gun around. And it was like dudes come out of nowhere and they're like, get him. And they're like kicking me. And I'm like, oh, how do I run? And I'd like just crouch 4 times, like on the ground, start crawling.
You depict yourself as like a bumbling British elephant drawing.
I was a weird kid. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Pooped in the bathtub again.
Yeah, like I have the weirdest memories of like getting into Metal Gear though, like because my best friend bought it, and then I'd be over at his house like screwing around and playing PC games on his computer in the corner, and he'd be playing this game, and gradually it kind of caught my attention, and then it was like just the fact that it kind of rewarded you messing with it. Like, we were really big into like screwing with cheat codes in PC games and sort of finding stuff we weren't supposed to, and so for this game to come along that was like, yeah, if you check this out, if you plug the controller into the other port, you can see stuff. Or like,
so
here's
cool.
the part where you get a wolf to piss on the cardboard box so that the other dogs stop biting you when you're crawling through the tunnel to go hang out with your sniper girlfriend, or whatever the it's a weird game that has so many little kind of like nooks and crannies to it. And
Also, like a really fun game to blow your parents' minds. Because I remember the Psycho Mantis thing with the controller, and I
man.
showed my dad that, and he didn't know that the PlayStation controller could do that.
Right.
And he was like mind blown, and I just felt so powerful.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those moments. Like I was playing like an X-Men game for Genesis way back in the day, and I had rented it, and like you had to like reset the game to progress, and no one told you that. It was in the manual, but if you rented it, you just got a piece of paper with like a drawing of a turtle on it that said like, "Don't forget to bring me back," and so you had no idea what to do. It's super weird.
Because there was also a codec code on the
Yeah.
back for Meryl, right?
Yep.
And it was like, that was on the back of the case.
And that was like word of mouth. It was like very early or pre-internet where you had to basically talk to friends and they'd be like, did you know you could do this? And be like, no way.
Everyone's talked about wanting Blue Point, whatever their rumored remake is, to be a Metal Gear Solid remake, which I would love because I've never played the original game in full and would like an updated version. But I do wonder what they could do to recapture that in this era, because you would have to think about someone might buy it digitally from the PSN.
It's also just like that kind of like stealth gameplay has changed so much.
Yeah.
It'd just be weird going back to the cone vision. I don't know. Is that
Well-
or do you think people would be more like open to it because it's an old game and it would?
I mean, it's.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'd love to see it just redone from like top to bottom, the same way that like the RE2 remake is like.
Yeah.
It doesn't play at all like
Yeah.
the original. It's got kind of the sort of core elements, but I mean that was it. Like
It's what Twin Snakes attempted,
Yeah,
but kind
yeah.
of broke
But it
broke it a little bit.
threw it out the window because it used the MGS2 controls basically.
Mm-hmm.
But like you could go into first person in Metal Gear Solid, but it was only to look around, which
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like help you get a better view of things because the camera angles are for the most part either like dynamic or isometric, which is pretty odd to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a strange game to go back to. I think that and like verticality sort of plays a thing you could, but not really. You know, it's not. It's definitely 3D environments, but how you kind of approach them isn't really. You don't really engage with them that directly.
Yeah.
Like you crouch to go into tunnels and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And accessibility wise in 2019, 2020, like remember the button mashing for saving Meryl? My God. That was hard.
Yeah, that was
I'm an
intense.
able-bodied person.
Yeah.
That was hard to
didn't
do.
Ocelot call you out if you used a turbo controller?
Oh, really?
Like
Probably.
he would be like, "Oh, you're cheating. You're using a bad controller. Shalashaska has descended." Or I don't remember. That's the next game.
I feel like a remake could do something like read your trophies and judge you based on it. And
Yeah. I mean, I would hope
Yeah.
that they would just bury a bunch of strange stuff in there
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
get that feeling of like discovery in there.
That could be really fun. And Lucy, for you.
No, I've changed mine.
Oh, you've changed.
Yeah, I
Oh.
don't want to be a sheep. Okay, so mine was originally Metal Gear Solid, but I got some crap for that. So I've changed, and in the last 5 minutes, I've changed my vote to Silent Hill.
Ooh,
Oh.
that is a correct answer from Lucy O'Brien.
Because I loved all the Resident Evil series, but Silent Hill was the first game that made me genuinely unnerved to the point where I sort of felt a bit nauseous, like in all the in all the ways that the best horror does, because I hadn't ever experienced horror like that. I don't think in any medium. It was a very kind of existential horror, and I just remember playing it and just being like, I'm going to have nightmares about this.
Well, because I think it's like it's not in a really overly sophisticated setting. It's in a familiar territory. It is this, your town or something, and it's something that played so well into the system's hardware limitations.
Yes.
Like that's
It
such a big part of it.
did so much with so little. I think one of the reasons when I eventually ended up watching Night of the Living Dead, when I started getting really into horror and going back into like horror history and stuff. And I remember there's this scene in Night of the Living Dead where they see the zombie for the first time. And he's just in broad daylight.
Broad daylight, yeah.
And it's in a graveyard, but he's just walking towards them, right? And there's something so much more frightening about that, and about sort of creatures just coming at you in an everyday setting that I hadn't really experienced before. Everything prior to that had been like things that go bump in the night, right?
Yep.
And so for me, Silent Hill was very much in that vein. Like it was just seeing a creature just come through the fog and just start like bashing on you. It was so frightening. And then like I remember, when everything would go into like deep Silent Hill, and then like you went through that hell, and there was that like just that feeling of dread all the way through it, where you just know that everything is just going to be way more aggressive, way more terrifying. All the environments are just like dripping with blood and gore, and it's just awful. And then there was actually this feeling of relief when you'd go back into the town the next time, and like there are just like regular kind of enemies walking around.
Yep.
It just did such an amazing job of sort of tightening the screws as you played through it. And yeah, I just like, for me, that was it for I was hooked on horror games from then on in.
I was going to say it totally makes sense why you love stuff like Evil Within, because that's absolutely has its roots buried in Silent Hill.
Very much so, yeah.
And Lucy, so we'll start with you for PS2 then.
Yes.
Because it plays off your new PS1.
Well, it does.
pick.
I mean, so
But-
Silent Hill 2 is
Yeah.
my PS2 pick, because I think that is the best Silent Hill. And again, it sort of took the bones of the original Silent Hill and just cranked it up. And to this day, I think it's probably the best horror game of all time. It's just I remember when I was at university, I remember my friends and I decided to play all of the Silent Hills through. There was maybe it was just 2 and 3. There was like a PlayStation 2 collection. And honestly, we were 20 years old. We were playing the dark. We were ourselves. It was just so, and Silent Hill 2, just, there's that scene where she's like, he's like, do you want to jump down the hole? And it's just like, it's just this black hole.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And it's just like, you have to do things like that regularly in that game.
Is 2 the one with the alternate ending or the secret ending with the dog?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's what I love about that game is it does a very Kojima thing where it's like, here's an incredibly serious setting and everything is like hyper specific and like in the right places. And then it's also like,
yeah, it's like it's very unnerving, but like the other, that's stupid. But the other thing that I really loved about Evil Within is not Evil Within, Silent Hill 2 is that it's also very moving. But all the Silent Hill stories in my mind have been actually incredibly moving. Mm-hmm. The first Silent Hill was the first and I think only game I've ever cried in.
Really?
Yeah, when you shut Lisa in the room. If you remember that. Mm-hmm. I was sobbing. I don't know why it really got to me. Did you play
the Wii one?
Oh, Shattered Memories?
Yeah.
No. Oh, I started it but didn't progress.
That was very, very similar to 2 in that it just took this very simple setting of a town and a school and stuff like that. And
it's meant to be great. That Sam
it was
Barlow?
really good.
Isn't that the guy who made
Yep. I think he was part of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good game.
Anyway, I just think that series is so just unbelievably fantastic, and I'm still, one of the biggest. There was a moment when Silent Hills got cancelled, and I was just like, I don't even think I want to be in this business anymore. This is just too heartbreaking. I can't take it, because that would have just been so perfect in Kojima's hands. But
I know he was tweeting about wanting to make the scariest horror game of all time a week or 2 ago. So, but then he was also tweeting about making Death Stranding 2. So once again we are provided 2 alternate timelines and it could go either way, but I really hope he does horror.
I'm totally all for a Death Stranding 2. I'd be interested in that, but if it's going to, it's going to take another 7 years for him to make whatever, and I'd prefer him to make the scariest game of all time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Especially with what PT promised.
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind saying that. Max, your favorite PS2 game is also a follow-up.
Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which I know somebody's in the comments just angrily being like, Snake Eater's better, and I agree, but I think
it is better.
It's also not on PS2.
Yeah, no, that was
Snake Eater? I thought it was PS3.
No, it was tail end.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess that's why they fit it on the 3DS.
Yes. No, I think Snake Eater is a better game, but I think the amount of ways that just sort of Silent Hill took what the first game was and escalated it. Metal Gear Solid 2 was the first modern Metal Gear game. Mm-hmm. It wasn't basically a 3D version of an MSX2 game. This was the amount of stuff, the amount of new mechanics that game brought to the table, which were all kind of refined and tweaked in Snake Eater, was mind-blowing. They were like, hey, check it out. Olga has armpit hair. You now can go into first person and shoot out lights. I don't know, there was stuff oh, look at the rain. The rain will, if you look straight up at the sky, the rain will pool on your TV screen.
Yeah.
Just the fact that was a mind-blowing effect at the time.
If you watch
I loved that.
The reveal trailer for that game from E3, it's incredible. They're like, hey, if you shoot the watermelon, it breaks in real-time physics. There's just if you shoot,
they mocapped Gallagher for that.
Yeah. They had him as a physics consultant for how watermelons shatter. But no, it's a totally bonkers game that sort of, again, speaking of Castlevania having crazy twists, I would say Metal Gear Solid 2 also had a pretty wild twist where it didn't have you playing as Snake for most of the game, which was kind of mind-boggling. Yeah, I think the game is the first Metal Gear Solid is kind of epitomizes oh, hey, wait, here's some mature storytelling on a home video game console. And then Metal Gear Solid 2 was all right, let's up the ante a little bit. Let's get kind of deep and philosophical and political and talk about, the effects of memes on politics. And whoops, here we are almost 20 years later. And it's this is kind of,
pretty fresh.
Yeah.
Prophetic, yeah.
Brian, what about for you for PS3?
This was a really tough one for me, but I ultimately settled on Shadow of the Colossus. I'm a huge Zelda fan. I'm a huge open world fan. I'm a huge fan of giant monsters and formidable creatures in video games. And I think that this game did such a magical job of capturing this vast sort of atmospheric, mostly empty world. At the time, the idea of like pivoting the ever bloated open world genre into something that was like stark and minimalist was like unheard of. The fact that you can go for large stretches of that game without seeing anything but like a lizard or a bird, and then all of a sudden you turn the corner and there's something the size of a skyscraper standing there, and it's not necessarily an enemy, but your sort of intrinsic nature is to kill it anyway and then feel bad for doing that.
Because you're destroying a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm so with you on this one. Like, I think what the Souls series did after this very much carried on this kind of feeling that I got from Shadow of the Colossus, which was you were just dropped in this world, and it existed long before you, and it will exist long after you, and it never felt like it was catering to you as a player.
Yeah.
It felt like you just were there, you were visiting. And I think some of the most magical video game worlds are worlds like that, where you will turn a corner and see something, and it's like, oh God, like, what would have happened if I hadn't turned that corner?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it feels like you're stumbling across things very organically. And the games that do that, in my opinion, are the best types of games. Like, you just feel so at the whims of that universe.
It was just sort of walking across this giant field. It's something we'd done in so many video games, and here it just felt like beautiful and sad. And
The
sort of
melancholy
haunted.
of that game.
That's exactly it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've never finished it in either the original form or the remake, which is beautiful, but I think it is part of that, like, every time I would kill a Colossus, it would be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, I feel bad about this. And I want to eventually go and finish that journey. But yeah, it was amazing at capturing that spirit.
Yeah, I mean, the sense of scale in climbing one of those things, like specifically on like weird hair on the back of its leg or something, and getting up to that top of its head and stabbing it and killing it while it writhed in pain and then ultimately collapsed and disappeared was like so fucking brutal and sad. And just, I'm so happy that game got made. It's so weird. It's such a strange game, but I'm really, really happy it got made. And I think it, like, honestly, it's like one of those things that sort of set Sony along that path of like, let's make these giant, you know, big, vast, open video games that have like also like a deep, incredible story. That just feel incredibly cinematic, that justify why you bought a PlayStation, why you bought a television. You know, like it's just. I'm so glad that game exists.
And it's such a haunting story with so little dialogue.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think in the same way that the landscape is kind of sparse and empty, I think the sort of the brevity of the storytelling, the fact that it recognizes that the operative nature of games is that you're doing stuff, you're engaging with the games, and like in the same way that, you know, World 1-1 of Mario, you learn what you're supposed to do in the first 2 screens of that.
Yeah.
It explains to you by you doing it. It doesn't have someone come out and be like, here's what's going on. Press A to do this.
Was it Little Max?
I realized
Oh wow, I'm supposed to jump here. Oh boy.
I realized also being like, I love Sons of Liberty. Anyway, games should shut up and, you know, get out of my way. But no, I think it's like in the same way that with movies, the sort of the rule should be show don't tell. I think in games it should be do don't show or tell, you know, and it's
Just no telling in general.
it's the best when they just get out of your way and you're like, you're in a world. All right, get out there.
Yeah,
Go out there, scrape your knees and fall out of a tree or whatever.
Yeah, it's impressive how much that game conveys with so little said about it. But you obviously come to understand it so fully, or like me, go look at the Wikipedia to find out what's going on. Do you want to jump to the next generation, PS3? And Brian, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. I was going to say The Last of Us, but I'm going to pivot and I'm going to say Journey, which is a completely different video game. Sort of. But yeah, Journey is a really, really special game to me because I think it sort of categorized where smaller more indie-shaped games were heading at the time. And I think it really broke through the ceiling of where games of that sort of stature could go. It is a very short game. It is not a good value for your buck, but it is an incredibly beautiful game. It's one of the most, I would say, like visually identifiable games in the history of our medium. You see a screenshot from that game and you know immediately what you're looking at and what the story is. And it's something that can be completed in a few hours. It's completely lonely and sort of somber, but at the same time, it has a really interesting multiplayer system where other players will appear in your world for just a brief time and help you with something and then disappear. It's another one of those games where there's next to no dialogue. It's incredibly minimalist. It's
show don't tell from the first second. Where there's the top of the mountain.
Yeah,
Go.
and it's the kind of game you can finish on a Saturday afternoon. It's filmic and it's really, really beautiful, and it really stuck with me. It's just a beautiful story of life and death.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful game, and I think there are a few games I remember playing through the ending of as specifically as the ending of that game. And for anyone who hasn't played it, I don't want to spoil that, but that final sequence, the way the music crescendos.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I
and just
remember
you're
telling
doing-
my partner at the time, like, come and look at this. 'Cause
Yeah.
It was so...
That put
Incredible.
me to tears. I was like sobbing during that.
I had my now wife, then girlfriend, play it, and she's into games and stuff, and she was down for it. But I was like, oh, this is multiplayer, which I should have told her, because the second she realized that these like other people in this world like flapping around, being being like, oh, she's like, what are you doing? Get out of here! leave me alone! And she's like screaming at the TV like a 14-year-old on Xbox.
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
can just
what's
imagine
wrong
her
with
doing
you, you
that.
sick
So
woman? I'm trying to help you find scarves.
Max, so what was your favorite PS3 game?
Oh man, this was a tough one.
Yeah.
Because you guys snatched up the good ones, but I'm gonna go hands down MotorStorm Pacific Rift.
That's the one?
No, I actually really like that game, but I'm not about to subject people to that being the best game. That is a
I was
game
just
where
gonna, I was like my heart sunk as I realized we're going to be talking about that for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You're
we
a
talk
big
about
MotorStorm
Heavenly
fan.
Sword.
Alfred Molina lent
There's always like one or two people who tweet at me and they're like, hell yeah, MotorStorm. And I'm like, that's right, we're out here, MotorStorm fans. They
Other
love
British child drawings of an elephant.
They love it when cars explode for going too fast.
I do poop the bathtub.
Babar, noted MotorStorm fan.
No, I want to say I'm split between Heavy Rain and Uncharted 2. I think if you're gonna pick an Uncharted game, I think 2 is the sort of the crown jewel of that quintology at this point. I guess 4.5 games.
Don't forget Fight for Fortune, the
and
card
then there's
game.
whatever. Anyway,
And Uncharted for Vita.
Vita, yeah.
The Golden
Uncarded.
Abyss. Yeah.
Golden Abyss,
Persona 5, the Golden Abyss. Okay.
PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
I think 2 is like the prime example
Love
of
the
like
story.
of like, here's the here they introduced those mechanics in the first game, and it was like, okay, it's like Tomb Raider with a boy or whatever, and then they were like, okay, no, let's try that again, and they come back and they just come out hitting and basically kind of refine kind of really every step of that, and just it's such a wonderful, big, loud, dumb action movie of a game, and it's just, I think all of those games do something well differently, like they always kind of tweak it and stuff, but I feel like 2 is really when it was like the biggest, like, ooh, yes, okay.
I think that game joins the ranks of games like Assassin's Creed 2, Watch Dogs 2, hopefully the next Fallen Order game, in that like there's this incredible groundwork there.
City.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
it's good. Actually, I will argue I really love the smaller scale of Arkham
Fair enough.
Asylum.
We'll wait till Barrett can come and
Yeah.
we can all have that
I'll
argument.
just say Donkey Kong 64.
But I
You're,
mean,
you're Greg's problem now.
It's that thing where like sequels can drop the ball, and I think a lot of times with movies they frequently suck. But
Yeah.
with games, it's like, let's refine that thing we were doing the first time around, and then they always shoot themselves in the foot by being like, crap, what do we do for 3? And then it's always a letdown because they try to either overdo it or they underdo it or whatever it is. But Uncharted 2 is like the train sequence is
The
just
train
Yeah.
sequence
Oh,
is
God,
full
yeah.
time.
The cinematic set pieces in that game, I think, are still like a benchmark a lot of developers are chasing. The train scene in particular, and then also the building crashing scene a little earlier in the game. Those two for me are like, I can remember those perfectly.
Yeah.
They're just
the
beautiful sequences.
the diversity in locales and sort of globe-trotting sort of campiness to that game, swashbuckling fun and all that is like versus the original, which is like mostly jungles.
Yeah.
Was such an awesome decision for that franchise, and it's like it totally brought it back to its source material, which is pulpy comics and Indiana Jones, and like that dude doesn't stay put in those movies. Like this was a game about going to a bunch of different places. It also really started to kind of experiment the narrative around how this dude is maybe not necessarily the best person. Like Nathan Drake kind of just impedes on mating dance rituals and steals their stuff and then bounces. And like, it's like, okay, yeah, that's not always the best thing. And like, maybe there are some selfishness or selfish acts about him going in and making his entire life dedicated to this. With the franchise went on to explore further and further down the line. Yeah, that is a goddamn magical game.
Yeah.
I love that game.
Yeah,
But yeah, flip side of that, I think Heavy Rain is like in the same way that I think Heavy Rain has got its share of weird issues, and it's definitely like very strange. But that
Like
was
just randomly having French children.
yeah.
Yeah, performances, like I went and revisited it. I think I re-reviewed it for IGN.
Yeah, I think David Cage put out a hit on you for that or something.
He put out a hit on me before then, actually. I think it was before then.
Whatever.
it was
Anyway,
fair.
Heavy
Anyway,
Rain.
anyway.
Rattled some cages.
Some of the sequences though in that game are
I mean, that came out at a time when I wasn't playing a lot of games because I was like just out of college, working, doing seasonal work at Banana Republic to pay rent, and if I had a PlayStation 3, I would have sold it by then.
Right.
Like I was flat broke, and I think a friend had that, and I was like, I'd been sort of head down for long enough that I was like, what is a triple A, quadruple A video game at the time look like? And I popped my head up and I was like, holy crap. Like this feels like this is a noticeable move forward in terms of like performance capture technology and just sort of this weird approach. Also, if you play it in French and you don't speak French, the acting is phenomenal.
I can only imagine.
Right.
So that was the thing. Just be like, oh, they make like big budget art house video games now. That's cool.
One thing I really loved about Heavy Rain, and well, all of David Cage's games, to be completely honest, even though it doesn't like me, I'm sorry, is that when you're playing these games, you really feel like you're making a difference to the story.
Yeah.
Like you really feel like your decisions are actively changing the shape of the story around you, and I think that is so paramount in a story that is essentially an interactive drama.
Yeah.
I mean, some there are some interactive dramas out there that are great, like a lot of Telltale stuff. Fantastic, but I never really felt the same sense of stakes that I did in a David Cage game. Like you do feel like you're controlling the narrative.
Sort of like a split-second twitch decision in this video game will allow a potential killer to escape from your grips and just disappear into the game only to come back later and be a problem.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because like you could have pressed triangle and then that wouldn't happen, but because you didn't, oops.
Yeah.
There's also like this game made you, first of all, the finger cutting scene in this game, the first time I played it was like, this game made you contort your hands around a video game controller in ways I never had before in deliberately cumbersome fashions.
the driving sequence.
Oh God, the
especially.
driving sequence, there's a part where your car goes into the water and you're struggling to unbuckle your seatbelt while drowning and reaching for the door to unroll the window. And it just makes you contort your hands around your controller in button configurations that you'd never done before because they're completely illogical.
In the same way that like early survival horror tank controls are like inherently kind of clumsy, and I think that was just really a sign of the times, but it sort of had that same feeling of when you're watching a horror movie and you're like, no, don't go up the stairs, run away, get out of the house. And you're like, that's because your thumb screwed up. You're going the wrong direction, you dumbass.
Yeah.
In this case, it was like, it's like you're gripping something.
Yeah, I specifically remember like putting the controller on my knee to like push the stick with my leg and then have my hands. It was just to like get through one scene, like, and then everybody also knows Jason.
Yeah,
Jason.
Yeah. No, I love it because it exists. It's something you can completely like lampoon and poke fun at and like riff tracks your way through, or you can take it seriously and be like, well, this is definitely a weird medley of different themes and really sort of impressive performances, and it's a technical feat, and I don't know, it's wild.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. That game is definitely a memorable one of that generation. And Lucy, for you, what was your...
Mine was, I know it's very predictable, but mine was The Last of Us. There's not much that I can say about that game that has not been said already. But I still think about that and that game and the ending in particular.
Yeah.
And I get chills. I think for me, I mean, there are so many reasons to love The Last of Us, but I still can't get over the ending. Like I just still can't believe that is where they went with it. It was so brave and so nuanced, and you just don't really see storytelling like that in video games. And this was from Naughty Dog, who did make those kind of big, loud action adventures with very clear beginning, middle, and ends. You can sort of see where they
That
end
Wily
from.
Bandicoot. And just
That Wily Bandicoot. You can, sort of see where they're going to go. But with The Last of Us, I was shocked. And it was sort of afterwards, it was hard to explain to people why I was so shocked.
Right.
I think it was just because it was like they pulled the rug out from under your feet. And, like the way that they left Joel, and it made you reflect on your entire experience with that game, with that character, and think, what have I done? Like, what was I doing that whole time? Mm-hmm. And that is just such a powerful, powerful feeling for a game to evoke. And I just I'm so excited for The Last of Us Part 2, but I'm also terrified because obviously that game just made so many brave choices, and I don't want them to back down.
I don't think they're going to. I'm sort of, don't get me wrong, I'm sort of dreading The Last of Us Part 2, or just in the sheer nature that like The Last of Us kicks your ass. Like it kind of is like it is a gut punch. It takes things that like, oh yeah, you're killing a zombie. That's the thing you do in a video game. You've done it a million times, and it's like, oh, let's make this a jarring, horrifying, just harrowing experience. And then, on top of that, there's also the human interactions. And now it's going to be like, oh, I guess we're going to be, I don't know, killing people with claw hammers. And
I think if you played that game like a dumb action game and it didn't sort of resonate with you personally, like you kind of played it wrong, like, or maybe you just don't care about video game stories, which is fine. That's totally an option. But I think that like one of the really understated things that Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us is sort of its restraint and its kind of beautiful use of negative space. That game is not just about bashing clickers in the head and shivving dudes in the neck. That game is about the moment where winter pops up on the screen, and then it's just quiet and things are not good, but they're empty and desolate, and you pull out a bow and arrow to hunt a deer and wound it, and that is like, that's unlike anything else that anyone else is doing at the time. That doesn't just keep ramping up, like it stops to breathe.
Yeah, and another thing that it does so well is that, thanks to brilliant performances and brilliant writing, is that you can feel the character's trauma. You can feel how much everything that they've gone through has psychologically affected them.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a zombie video game where the zombies are entirely secondary to the real human threats in that game. Yeah, it's like they might as well be trees and mountains because they're they're scary, but they are not your biggest problem.
Yeah, it is.
I want to, like, that definitely had games growing up. I want to see what Naughty Dog does after The Last of Us Part 2 and 3 and Lost Legacy or whatever they decide to do, because I feel like it's going to be something like, here's a game about divorce, and you're like, oh God. Like, it's going to be like they've gone from a cartoon Orange Bandicoot to like
Blue Valentine with
you're the most human, human interactions. Like, where
they go next?
Honorable mention to the Left Behind DLC, which I think is some of the best sort of standalone story.
For me, that's the best DLC I've ever played.
Yeah.
And again, that was an incredible gut punch, and again, so subtle. And as a woman who likes other women, it was very real on that level as well. And I just, it was incredibly profound. And so for the people who are like, oh, well, don't make Ellie gay in The Last of Us Part 2, you have not played Left Behind, because that's where they show it.
Little late for that. Very excited to see what The Last of Us Part 2 brings us. I have a feeling we'll be talking about that for quite a while next year. But before we get there, other PS4 games have, of course, come out. The generation's not over. But from what has been released so far, Lucy, we'll start with you. What is your favorite PS4 game?
Bloodborne. I got in first.
That's okay. I stole one from you, right? No?
I think I just stole from everyone else.
Okay.
But, we all of us love Bloodborne, apart from Dorno. Have you played it?
I've played the first hour or two and couldn't beat it.
Right.
Put it down.
Okay.
I'll go back to it eventually, but...
You just have to play that 40 times and you'll
perfect.
get there.
There's a saying, it's...
The problem
it takes 40 tries, but you'll enjoy it at the end.
It gets good after the first 30 hours.
I had my friend Tristan, who works in the Australian office, has a disgusting term for that, which I will tell you guys when the microphones are off.
Oh, really? It's worse than the Crash Bandicoot thing you said earlier? Okay. Wow.
So Bloodborne is my favorite, I would say my favorite game of all time. Still, in terms of just across everything. World building, enemy design. Fashion.
It is pretty good.
I mean,
he's got a cool coat.
He's got a great outfit.
Yeah.
Or she.
Yeah. And it is and of course that sort of unforgiving combat that the Soul series is known for, but with the added twist that it was more of a sort of offensive game than a defensive game, which appealed to me a lot more.
Same.
I have enjoyed every Souls game I've played, but I really struggle with the constant defense and the very considered. Like in Bloodborne, you have to consider your moves as well. Of course you do, but there's always that chance you can get some of your health back, and it's always about going a step forward.
It's a lot more visceral, right? It's a lot of rolling and slashing and putting fire on your stick and stabbing it into a skeleton's eye.
And yeah, it like all Souls games, like all FromSoft games, it can be frustrating, but all the mistakes you make are yours to own. And I loved that about Bloodborne, and I've never experienced in my entire life playing a video game such euphoria as I felt when I finished that game.
Oh God, yeah.
I felt like I'd taken ecstasy.
Yeah.
I was high.
Yeah, you will stand up in the middle of the night and scream in joy or agony, pain and suffering, and then you'll try it again, and then you'll keep going.
I felt like I grew to be a better person.
Yeah.
Through that game.
Yeah.
It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me
when we were having
taught my girlfriend at the time a lot about myself.
When we were having that whole debate as an industry about difficulty in video games, and there were a lot of people sort of being like, oh, this is a company this is a developer team that wants you to feel this, and a lot of other people were like, no, I should be able to beat it. You're all right. You should be able to beat it.
Yeah.
But if you do actually overcome and you do kick that thing's ass, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it in video games. It's one of the best feelings in the world. And that's what they're trying to give to you. They're doing it. They're gatekeeping and they're being mean about it. That's what they're trying to give to you.
Pleasure through pain. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
I hope someday to become a better person and finish this fine.
You're doing it. You're chipping away.
You're chipping away.
I'm honestly at this point, it's like, will I beat that game before I have children? I don't know. Will I beat that game after I have children? Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I must also say that it was a really amazing experience, as it is with any FromSoft game, to play just as the game came out and people were sort of making all their discoveries together.
Yep.
I found that playing with people around me, and it was a feeling of community that I had when I was playing that game. And everyone was like, I remember the first time someone was like, oh, you should go find the music box to help you kill Father Gascoigne. And I was just like, what? What are you talking about? And then you get the root, and it's like pre-internet, you know what I mean? Everyone was discovering its secrets at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. It's hard to have that.
Schoolyard logic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I just want to say anecdotally, over Thanksgiving break, I convinced 2 people to start playing Bloodborne, and they're both mad at me.
Nice.
They're both very furious.
Of course they are.
Max, what about for you? What is your favorite PS4 game?
What did I put?
You put 2 games. Well, one franchise
Do I have
and
to
one game.
guess? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Wait, hold on. No, so
His favorite game.
Amazing Spider-Man.
There it
Or
is.
Spider-Man. not
Marvel's
Amazing. I thought it was an amazing Spider-Man. No, Spider-Man I think is I think God of War is a better game than Spider-Man, but I loved Spider-Man with all my heart. It was to take a character that has been portrayed so many times and put it in, here's an open world New York City, go around and fight crooks. These are things we've done before, but to do that and stick the landing so hard, and then for the landing to be on the ceiling, and then you're hanging off of there, and then you're dragging guys with webs and throwing them around. It was.
You don't even have to land, actually.
Yeah, you don't have
for the landing.
You don't. Yeah, Spider-Man, he does do that, but no, that game is just. I feel like it is. It feels so just confident and just it gets the job done so well. And it's also, it manages to be, heartfelt and frightening in times, and it's got
Performances in Spider-Man.
They're
are
great.
like it's got a tremendous range where it's not entirely like a dark gloomy fart of an experience, and it's not entirely like a happy-go-lucky thing. It goes across the board, and like it's also, I don't know, I've consumed I don't even know how many different iterations of Spider-Man over the years, and for it to come out and have some surprises and be like, oh wow, oh interesting, oh you've won me over with that.
I think it also has my favorite video game costume ever, which sucks because that's a video game where they keep adding more costumes, and I'm like, thanks guys, but I'm full on the cartoon costume that I can wear in every cutscene, even the sad ones. Like characters, like bad things happen to them, and then cartoon Spider-Man's like, oh no.
Well, it's funny wearing the Iron Spider costume, which is ostensibly made of iron, metal, but it can just peel off like it's a regular glove. Is funny, but yeah, that original costume is so good.
I also think it has the best, for me, it has the best, most heartfelt portrayal of Mary Jane and Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Like the
two of them are amazing.
that has the most
there was
accurate,
so much chemistry between them in that game.
that is the most accurate angry girlfriend texting in a video game.
Yeah.
Like to
that
be like,
texting
I'm
scene is
Spider-Man, I
amazing.
can just swing across the city, and it was just like, hey, why aren't you? And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. And it was like, that was like, oh, that's a weird impulsive reaction to be like, shit, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, Yuri Lowenthal and Laura Bailey are so good in that game. I can't wait to see more of them.
I mean, like the locomotion in that game. It's the thing is, like, I think a lot of people forget that everyone talks about Spider-Man 2. It's an awesome video game, right? That was the one that totally nailed it. And then there was like what felt like 10 years or more where we just got games that were trying to do that all over again and totally missed the mark. And for these guys to come back and nail this game and just make it so, I remember like the first half hour, I was like, I don't know, man, I don't think they did it. And then it would start to click and you would start to get more moves and you'd start to speed up. And like, I remember you would do the same thing every kid does is you climb to the top of the Empire State Building and you jump off.
Yeah.
And then you were like,
felt so good.
Got it. And I remember just like, I'm getting all these phone calls and texts on my phone in the game being like, oh, come over, fight the Rhino. I was like, nope, I got to get all the backpacks. Get all the backpacks. Everybody can wait.
First and only game I platinumed.
It is a really fun platinum.
Yeah.
Moving on from that one, Brian. Oh, do you have more?
Oh yeah, I was going to say
you're
the
going to do
entire Yakuza series.
This is a bit of a cheat, but
That's
I'll allow
okay.
it.
Well, only because they were like, we have a great new game. It's called Yakuza. It's available now for the PlayStation 2. And everyone's like, no. And then they were like, all right, well, 11 years later, hey, everybody, we're back. And then there are currently like 7 Yakuza games with one more to come. And then Judgment, which is a spinoff, all on PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on there.
It's a great place to play that. Yeah.
Good game.
Turns out the PS4, good video game system.
Yeah, a lot of
Those guys know what they're doing over there.
Brian, what about you as we start to wrap up?
Mine was Bloodborne, obviously, because that's in my like top 2 games of all time. It kicks so much
the other
ass.
one?
Animal Crossing.
Yeah, Animal Crossing is probably top 4.
No, I'm like,
Together at
no,
last.
no, but it's just like
Top
I've
2 is a
always
specific
thought
number.
that Bloodborne was your favorite game.
Yeah, no,
like mine.
I
But
think
I'm curious as to what, because I feel like we're quite in step with our taste. So I'm curious as to what your number 2 is.
my top 3 are Link's Awakening and then a tie between Resident Evil 4 and Bloodborne. Or you can mix any of those 3 up on any given
Because
day.
Resident Evil 4 before Bloodborne came along was my favorite game.
It was Bloodborne before Bloodborne, basically. Yeah. But God, those games are so good. So good. Mine's God of War when it's not Bloodborne.
When it's not Bloodborne.
Yeah, but God of War was, again, one of those games we've talked about to death. We spent all of last year and a lot of this year celebrating how much ass that game kicked and, how many hearts it kicked too. It was a very special game for me. It came at a very special time. It was a big nonsense fantasy game about like a kind of like an angry bald guy that connects with his child and mourns the loss of like a very powerful woman in his life. For me, that was my mom. For Kratos, it was his wife and, Atreus' mom. And I just like remember very early on in that game, starting it out and being like, okay, I'm going to just beeline through the story, see what this game's all about. And then I made a left and I was like, oh, there's a treasure chest. I wonder how he's going to open that. Oh, he punches it. He punches right. That's what if there's something glass inside? And then being like, I want to punch all the treasure chests. I want to do everything, which I wanted to do with Fallen Order also, but that was a game where it's like, oh, yeah, well, he can open it, but guess what's inside?
Poncho.
It's ponchos.
It's a poncho.
Yeah, which I still liked, but still. So God of War went from being a game that I was going to just be like, yeah, let's see what the story is, let's get through it, to being like, I want to explore every inch of this world. I want to check out every side story. I want to meet every character. The writing was so good. All of the characters you meet, like the two brothers that like have broken up and don't hang out anymore, it reminded me of like there's these two guys in Link to the Past that do the same thing, and like you bomb their bedroom and they're like, yeah, I guess I'll go talk to this guy now. They kind of recreated that in God of War. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus, how they sort of inherit each other's best and worst traits throughout the game, was something I did not expect to see coming. I would never ever thought in a million years, if you had told me during the pinnacle of the PS3 that I would play a God of War game on PS4 and burst into tears at the end, I never would have believed you.
You don't like fantasy. Like I feel like that's a tough
true.
sell for
I
you
like
in
some
Okay.
fantasy. I like Zelda fantasy. I don't like Lord of the Rings.
There's a lot of fantasy that you're like immediately kind of like, I don't know about that. You're
Yeah,
like, you
but like there's a difference between like elfin long flowing locks straddling a unicorn and
and a
punching
dude with an
a
axe.
chest.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there's a lot of fantasy.
yeah.
buried
I mean,
in
I
this
think
game.
that speaks a lot to God of War and how much it wins people over. Like in the same way that like I went into Spider-Man being like, all right, I already love Spider-Man. What can you do to impress me? And walked away being like, that's great. I went into God of War being like, I do not like Kratos as a character.
No, neither I didn't like Kratos as a character.
He looks like the lead
last
singer
year.
for Disturbed. He's angry all the time. I don't know how to feel about that. Whenever I
He
say
He looks
that
like
on
he'd
the
be into
podcast-
like
yeah.
he looks like he'd be into some really dodgy shit in 2018.
He would have a Calvin peeing sticker on his truck.
He'd have taken a selfie in his car with the sunglasses on.
And
but-
his Tinder profile pic would be him holding a fish.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They took this character that we all had these preconceived notions about, and they were like, "Hey, here's a weird redemption story. Here's like a incredibly well crafted, just like character study."
But also like Brian, you were just saying, it was such great writing. I just like last year was so fantastic for just great dialogue in general. Like we had Red Dead 2 last year as well, and it's just like
Hello,
in terms
mister.
of brilliant, clever, funny writing. Those two games were just
Oh yeah.
they were step in step. Like they were just so good. And that's kind of where, like, for me, that's the benchmark of fantastic video game writing right now.
Yeah, it was a great year for that. And obviously, there have been a lot of great games across all these generations. Went a little bit longer than I expected.
That was fun.
But that was really fun. Please let us know.
You wind us up to talk about 25 years
Yeah,
worth
I know,
of video
there's a
games,
lot.
and we go for a minute.
What a shock. No, I love when that happens. We are a little crunched for time, so we're not going to do a normal news crunch this week. But I will briefly mention, yes, we have seen the PS5 dev kit photo. It looks like the dev kits that we saw before.
You tweeted something funny. What was it?
Yeah, a lot of people really missed that joke. That
I
kind of
liked
bummed me
it a
out.
lot.
No, it's a giant V covered in vents, and I was like, the V stands for vents, and a lot of people were like, the V actually stands for 5.
Oh, no.
And I was like, no. Why do I use this website?
In addition to that, Persona 5 Royal got a release date for the West. It is coming March 31st, 2020. So just a few days after Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing New Horizons if you have a Switch. So not a quiet time of year that will be. Kojima talked a bit about a possible Death Stranding sequel. I think we don't have enough time to talk about that right now. But Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC info was also revealed. That's on IGN.com as well. Want to briefly mention, because this is the probably most relevant thing that's been going on today as we're recording, a listing for what appeared to be the Resident Evil 3 remake was added to the PSN catalog and then removed. But it showed some pretty authentic looking box art both for Biohazard RE3 and Resident Evil 3, showing a remade Nemesis as well as the two main characters.
So exciting. So exciting.
We've
Here's
seen
a
leaks
terrible
about this
fact.
before.
Terrible
Yes.
fact. I never finished Resident Evil 3 because halfway through playing it, my grandma died. And so like I never finished it, and like because it was just like a tumultuous time.
Sure.
And so now I'm gonna finish it.
You'll get to find out how
finally.
it
It's like
ends.
it's like Resident Evil 3 and 6 are I think the only two sort of mainstay Resident Evil games
Well, that's probably all your
that
grandma's,
I
right?
haven't finished.
Good God, man.
So anyway, that leaked. Obviously, Capcom has not said anything official, but if we hear anything else, we'll of course let you know. There's a big show also coming in December, so if there's going to be any announcements about stuff, the Game Awards is probably where things will happen. We'll cover stuff a bit more in detail in the weeks to come. I did want to wrap up very quickly with a memory card. This one came to the show as we were recording from Hannah. Hannah wrote in and wrote, "Hey guys, thanks for all your work on the show. I really enjoyed the memory card segment, so I thought I'd share how my dad and I have bonded through our love of games. Ever since I was a little girl, my dad brought home games to play with me. He showed me how to make maps for Zork and solve puzzles with me in Myst. He encouraged my interest in computer graphics, and I later received my degree in graphic design and worked as a 3D modeler and character rigger for motion capture. Days after my husband and I brought our oldest son home from the hospital, my dad stayed up late and helped me with the baby while cheering me on during a particularly challenging campaign in Valkyrie Chronicles for the PS3. My son is 11 years old now, and my dad was here recently watching me complete Valkyria Chronicles 4 for PS4. My dad is turning 70 in a few days, and he's maxed out everything in Skyrim, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Battlefront 2, so I think he might like Jedi Fallen Order for his birthday.
Hell yeah.
I hope he enjoys it as much as I have. It's been fun to watch him play games with his grandkids. It's something that we can all enjoy together. I'm so thankful that my dad encouraged me in something that's brought a lot of fun and joy to my life. Now it's time to pass that on to the next generation. Thanks for listening, Hannah.
That is so amazing. Can you put Circle of Life song on right now?
Sure, that shouldn't be a copyright issue.
As a dad with a young baby, I cannot even begin to imagine playing through Valkyrie Chronicles like right when you get home from the hospital with the kid. You're on like 45 minutes of sleep a week, and you're like, yeah, let's get into this gigantic ass game.
But Hannah, thank you so much for writing in. If you would like to write in a memory card story where we read stories from listeners and viewers at home about your funny, weird, wacky, strange, whatever memories of your PlayStation life, write into beyond@IGN.com with the subject line memory card, and we'll read those every week on the show. If you also have questions you want us to read on the show, please write into beyond@IGN.com. We'll read those in the weeks to come. Thank you for everyone who dropped in questions at the Facebook group. We'll read those on another week's show since we're a little pressed for time. But that, I think, yes.
What if we got people in the comments to go in and list their favorite games for each generation?
That would be
have fun at home.
Yeah.
a great idea, Max. Yes, please do that either in the comments on IGN.com or on YouTube.com/IGNBeyond for this episode. We'll read some of those at the top of next week's show. But thank you for watching or for listening to the show, Beyond episode 620. We're live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific at beyond.ign.com, youtube.com/IGNBeyond, and your favorite podcast services around the world. When we're not recording the show, of course, we are on IGN.com. Be sure to check out the best of nominees when those go up. Vote on those. Yell at us about what we got wrong or right.
And we will also have, let me just double check that this is correct. So we will also have we will be announcing our Game of the Year winners because there are lots of categories.
All the awards.
On Tuesday, the 10th.
The 10th.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So look forward to that as well. And of course, if you want to reach out to us, in addition to the show, we're also on Twitter. I am at JM Dornbush. Brian is at Agent Bizzle. Lucy is at Luce O'Brien. And Max is at Max Scoville.
If you enjoyed MotorStorm Pacific Rift as much as I do,
tweet at that man.
Let me know.
And if you like Heavenly Sword, I guess tweet at me.
That's great.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. And as always, Beyond.
Beyond.
Happy birthday, PlayStation.
You're old enough to rent a car. Drive it fast enough till it blows up.
Do you have to be 25 for that?
Yeah, 25.
What? Drive it? What?
To rent a car.
To rent a car.
Yeah.
Why did I think it was
Crazy
younger than
American
that?
rules.